You can't eat these. This is for the guest. My mother, Catherine, snatched the warm bread roll from my 9-year-old daughter's hand before she could even take a bite. The air on the terrace of the Oceanside Yacht Club was thick with sea salt and expensive perfume. But suddenly, all I could smell was shame. Across the white linen tablecloth, my sister Victoria's children were digging into $65 plates of lobster pasta, the buttery scent wafting toward us. My daughters Harlow and Sabrina stared at their empty placemats, confusion clouding their eyes. Then, with a flick of her wrist that felt like a slap, Catherine slid a basket from a nearby vacant table toward us. It was filled with half-eaten stale rolls. "Here," she said, her voice loud enough to cut through the polite chatter of the charity gala. "This should hold them over. We don't want to waste the budget on extras. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community." I froze. My entire body went rigid like I'd been doused in ice water. For a split second, instinct kicked in. The old instinct, the one trained into me since childhood. Just accept it. Don't make a scene. Break the bread. Feed your hungry children. It would be easier. It would keep the peace. But then I looked across the table. Victoria had her phone out. She wasn't even looking at us. She was filming her son wrestling a massive lobster claw, narrating for her Instagram story about cultivating a palate early. She was oblivious. Or maybe she just didn't care. And that indifference, that casual erasure of my children's dignity, snapped something inside me. I didn't cry. Tears are for people who think there's still a negotiation happening. This wasn't a negotiation. This was an eviction notice for my patience. I raised my hand, signaling the maitre. He arrived instantly, practiced smile in place. "Can I get you anything else, ma'am?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady, almost bored. "2 filts medium rare. And bring a bottle of the 1998 Cabernet. The good one, not the house pour." Catherine's jaw dropped. Her eyes darted around to see who was watching. "Natalie, what are you doing? This isn't in the budget." We agreed to keep it simple. I didn't look at her. I looked at my girls. "You're not eating stale bread tonight." The steaks arrived sizzling and perfect. My girls ate with wide eyes. The rich food a stark contrast to the scraps they'd been offered moments before. I poured myself a glass of wine, took a sip, and stared my mother down. She didn't say a word. She just seethed, a vein throbbing in her temple, trapped by her own obsession with public appearances. She couldn't scream. Not here. Not in front of the club board. Then the bill came. $450. Catherine snatched the leather folder, her eyes scanning the total. She let out a sharp performative gasp, then looked at me expectantly. The silence stretched. She was waiting for me to do what I always did, apologize, pull out my card, and pay for the privilege of being treated like garbage. Instead, I opened my purse. I pulled out 2 crisp $100 bills. Just enough to cover the steaks and the wine. I placed them on the table right on top of the bill. "The rest is on the host," I said, standing up. "Enjoy the gala. Come on, girls." I took Harlow and Sabrina by the hands and walked away. Behind me, I heard Catherine's sputtered protests, the frantic whisper shouting as she realized she was stuck with the tab. I didn't look back. I walked through the opulent dining room, past the stairs, past the judgment, and out into the cool night air. Felt like breathing for the first time in 34 years. The drive home was quiet. The adrenaline that had fueled my exit began to fade, leaving behind a dull, familiar ache in my chest. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I looked in the rearview mirror. The girls were asleep in the back, full and safe. But my mind was racing, replaying the scene, dissecting the years that led to this moment. I've always been the fixer, the one who smooths things over, the one who cleans up the mess. When Victoria dropped out of college to pursue acting, I helped her write her resume. When her lifestyle brand launched and failed within 6 months, I designed the website for free. When Catherine needed someone to organize the charity auction because she was too overwhelmed, I did it. I was the reliable one, the sturdy one, the one who didn't need anything because I was supposed to provide everything. And what did I get for it? Stale bread. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the value. That very morning before the gala, I had signed a contract for a massive design project. 6 figures, life-changing money. I had driven to the yacht club, bursting with the news, ready to share it, ready to finally be seen as successful. But the moment I sat down, the words died in my throat because I knew Catherine wouldn't care. She would have asked if the client could hire Victoria as a consultant. She would have asked if I could loan them money for the next venture. My success was only valuable to them if they could consume it. I thought about Victoria, 36 years old, a failed actress turned momfluencer whose entire career was funded by our mother. She lived in a house she didn't pay for, drove a car she didn't buy, and fed her kids lobster on a tap she couldn't cover. Me, I was the silent partner in their delusion. I had been funding my own abuse. Every dinner I paid for, every crisis I solved, every time I swallowed an insult, I was paying a subscription fee to a family that didn't want me, just my utility. For years, I told myself I was keeping the peace, that being the bigger person meant absorbing the blows so the family wouldn't shatter. But looking at the sleeping faces of my daughters, I realized the truth. I wasn't keeping the peace. I was keeping the secret. I was protecting them from the consequences of their own selfishness. I was trained for this. Since I was a child, I was taught that having needs was selfish, that expressing anger was ungrateful, that my role was to be the backdrop for Victoria's performance. "You're so strong, Natalie," my mother would say, usually right before asking me to do something she didn't want to do. It wasn't a compliment. It was a command. Be strong so I don't have to be responsible. Be strong so Victoria can be fragile. But tonight, I wasn't strong. I was done. The silence in the car wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy with the realization that I had been an accomplice in my own erasure. I had taught them how to treat me. And tonight, for the first time, I had taught them something else. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my phone was vibrating against the center console. A relentless, angry buzz. I didn't need to look to know who it was. The attack had begun. I carried the girls inside, tucked them into bed, and kissed their foreheads. Then I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hand was shaking. Not from fear, from clarity. I unlocked my phone. The screen was filled with notifications. Text after text from Catherine. "You humiliated us in front of the club board. Jackson had to put the bill on his business card. How could you be so selfish? We were trying to save money for the auction." Then Victoria, "You're just jealous because my kids are used to a finer palate. You didn't have to make a scene. Those rolls were artisanal, by the way. You wouldn't know the difference." And then the demand. "Transfer $500 immediately. We need to cover the damages to our reputation." Jackson is furious. I stared at the words. Artisanal damages. Reputation. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. They weren't sorry they starved my children. They were sorry I noticed. They were sorry I stopped playing along. I sat down at the kitchen island and looked at the messages again, but this time I didn't feel the old surge of guilt. I felt analytical. It was like looking at a blueprint. I could see the structure of it now. The architecture of our family. Catherine was the architect of the dysfunction, the martyr narcissist. She needed to be the victim and the hero simultaneously. She needed Victoria to be the golden child, the extension of her own ego, the shiny object she could show off to the world. Victoria's success was her success. Victoria's beauty was her beauty. Me, I was the scapegoat, the trash can for their shame. When things went wrong, it was my fault. When money was tight, it was because I wasn't generous enough. When the mood was bad, it was because I was difficult. I was the container for everything they didn't want to feel about themselves. Victoria was the golden child. I was the shadow. I existed to absorb the darkness so they could stay in the light. That's why my success didn't matter to them. It actually threatened them. If I was successful, if I was powerful, then I didn't fit in the trash can anymore. And if I didn't fit in the trash can, where would they put their garbage? That's why they had to diminish me. That's why the bread rolls. It wasn't about the budget. It was about putting me back in my place. Reminding me that even at a black tie gala, I was still the servant, still the one who ate scraps, but I wasn't a child anymore. I was a woman who had just landed a six-figure contract. I was a mother who refused to let her daughters inherit this legacy of scraps. I didn't reply. I didn't send the money. I swiped the notifications away and set the phone face down. The vibration continued, a dull thud against the granite counter, but it felt distant now, like a storm raging in another county. I walked down the hallway to my home office. It was a small room cluttered with sketches and fabric swatches, but it was my sanctuary. In the center of the room sat a massive scarred oak drafting desk. It was the only thing I had from my father, Robert. He had been a quiet man, an architect who spent most of his life in the shadow of Catherine's loud personality. When he died, Catherine had cleared out his study with ruthless efficiency. She sold the leather chairs, donated the books, and told me to haul this desk away because it was garbage that didn't fit her condo's aesthetic. I ran my hand over the rough wood. It was stained with ink and coffee rings, scarred by decades of work. It was sturdy, honest. I needed to clean it out. I needed to do something with my hands. I started pulling out drawers, emptying old pens, and dried up erasers into the trash. The bottom drawer was stuck. I jiggled it, pulled harder. Nothing. I knelt down and felt around the back. There was a small latch hidden under the lip of the wood. I pressed it. A click echoed in the quiet room. A false bottom popped up from the drawer's base. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached in and pulled out a thick leather-bound ledger and a stack of bank statements bound with a rubber band. On top was a note in my father's distinct blocky handwriting. The trust strategy to ensure fairness. I opened the ledger wasn't just numbers. It was a diary of financial survival. My father had tracked every dollar. He knew. He knew about Catherine's spending. He knew about the favoritism. And he had made a plan. I turned the pages, my eyes scanning the columns. Trust fund, initial deposit, $250,000. Purpose, grandchildren's education and health. Equal distribution mandatory, $250,000. My breath caught. Last year when Harlow needed braces, I had asked Catherine for help just alone. $4,000. She had sighed, looked at me with pity and said, "Oh, Natalie, I wish I could, but your father didn't leave much. The trust is empty. We used it all for his medical bills." I believed her. I took out a high-interest credit card to pay for the orthodontist. I worked extra shifts. I felt guilty for even asking. The trust is empty. I grabbed the stack of bank statements. They were recent, dating back 10 years up to last month. The balance wasn't zero, but it wasn't $250,000 either. I started referencing the ledger against the statements. The statements against the family updates Catherine sent out in her monthly newsletters. October 3 years ago, withdrawal $15,000. Memo medical necessity Victoria. I checked the date. That was the month Victoria got her mommy makeover. The surgery she claimed was a gift from a sponsor. August 2 years ago. Withdrawal $50,000. Memo. Priol enrichment. Victoria's children. Priol. Victoria's kids were 7 and 9. I dug deeper. The transfer went to a business account. Vicky's Vibe LLC. That was the boutique. The curated lifestyle shop Victoria launched that sold 3 candles and closed 6 months later. Catherine had told me she funded it with a small personal loan. $50,000 of my father's money stolen to fund a vanity project that failed, and then the recurring payments every month $2,000 to J Consulting. I searched the business registry on my laptop. J Consulting registered agent Jackson Miller, Victoria's husband. It was a shell company. They were siphoning money out of the trust monthly like a salary for being useless. I did the math. The calculator app on my phone glowing in the darkroom. 15,000, 50,000. The monthly payments. The trustee expenses. For spa weekends. Catherine labeled as meetings. Total withdrawn $185,000. My father's legacy. My children's future. Stolen. Not just spent. Stolen. They didn't just give me stale bread because they were mean. They gave me stale bread because they were thieves. They needed me to feel poor so I wouldn't ask questions. They needed me to feel grateful for scraps so I wouldn't look for the feast. The trust is empty. It was a lie, a six-figure lie told by a mother to her daughter while her granddaughter's teeth needed straightening. I looked at the ledger again. My father's handwriting was steady. Meticulous. He had tried to protect us. He had tried to build a wall against exactly this kind of greed. But he had made one mistake. He made Catherine the trustee. I closed the ledger. The leather felt cool under my fingers. The anger that had been a hot flame earlier was gone. In its place was something cold, something hard, like steel. I wasn't just a graphic designer anymore. I was a forensic accountant of my own betrayal. I picked up my phone. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I didn't care. I took photos of every page, every withdrawal slip, every incriminating line. I drafted an email to the estate lawyer listed on the statements. Subject: Urgent fraudulent activity in Walker Family Trust. Then I printed copies, one set for me, one set for the lawyer, and one set for Catherine. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a friendly ring. It was the sharp, insistent pressing of someone who felt entitled to my time. I opened the door. Catherine stood there flanked by the morning sun, looking like a catalog model for a grieved mother. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and clutching a designer bag that I now knew my father paid for. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the hallway without waiting for an invite. "You have been ignoring my texts for 48 hours. Do you have any idea how worried I've been? Jackson is talking about suing you for the dinner bill." She marched into the living room and turned to face me, taking off her sunglasses to reveal perfectly applied makeup. "You are going to transfer that $500 today, Natalie. And then you are going to write a formal apology to Victoria. She has been crying for 2 days. You ruined her image at the club." I stood by the door. I didn't close it. "Are you finished?" I asked. "No, I am not finished. You are acting like a child. You think because you have a little job you can disrespect us? You need to learn your place, Natalie. Victoria has a public image to maintain. We all do, and you are embarrassing us." My place. I walked over to the side table where I had left the manila envelope. I picked it up. It felt heavy. "I know about the boutique," I said. Catherine stopped mid-breath. "What?" "I know about the $50,000 for the boutique. I know about the $15,000 for the surgery. I know about Jackson's consulting fees." I pulled out the photocopies, the ledger page, the withdrawal slip, the business registry printout. I held them out to her. "I found Dad's ledger. In the desk. You told me to throw away." Catherine stared at the papers. She didn't take them. Her face went from flush to a terrifying shade of gray. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The arrogance evaporated, leaving behind a frightened aging woman caught in a lie she thought she'd take to the grave. That was investment," she stammered, her voice trembling. "Your father wanted us to support family businesses. It was a loan." "It's fraud," I said, my voice flat. "It's embezzlement. You spent money earmarked for grandchildren's education on plastic surgery and shell companies. You denied Harlow braces while you were paying Jackson a salary for nothing. Natalie, please. You don't understand the pressure, the club fees, the maintenance on the condo. We had to keep up appearances. Appearances. I laughed. A short, dry sound. You stole from your grandchildren to impress strangers at a yacht club. I stepped closer. I've already sent copies to the estate lawyer. He's freezing the accounts this afternoon. You can't. They'll audit us. I could go to jail. Her voice rose to a shriek. Natalie, I'm your mother. You can't send your mother to jail. You have 24 hours. I said, liquidate the club membership. Sell the condo if you have to. Replenish the trust. Every single penny. $185,000. I can't raise that kind of money in a day. Then I file a police report. And everyone at the club, every single person you tried to impress will know exactly how you paid for those lobster dinners. She started to cry, then ugly, desperate sobs, begging, pleading, asking how I could be so cruel. I'm just being the fixer, I said. I'm fixing the mistake Dad made when he trusted you. I pointed to the open door. Get out. She left. She stumbled down the walkway looking older and smaller than I had ever seen her. I watched her get into her car and drive away. I closed the door. I locked it. Then I slid the deadbolt home. The fallout was swift. It wasn't loud. It was the quiet implosion of a structure that had no foundation. Catherine liquidated her assets. She sold her jewelry, cashed out her own retirement accounts, and yes, she sold the yacht club membership. She avoided jail, but she couldn't avoid the truth. The money was returned to the trust. Victoria's image crumbled as the funding dried up. Without Catherine's constant injections of cash, the lifestyle evaporated. The influencer career ended when she couldn't afford the props. Jackson had to get a real job. They moved into a smaller apartment, one they actually paid for. I recovered the funds. All of it. I didn't buy a new car. I didn't go on a shopping spree. I paid for Harlow's braces. I watched her smile in the orthodontist chair, knowing that I had done that. Not with a loan, not with begging, with justice. The rest of the money went into untouchable education bonds for Harlow, for Sabrina, and yes, even for Victoria's children because they were innocent in this. They shouldn't be punished for their mother's greed. My father wanted fairness. I honored that. I sat at my father's desk in the quiet of my office. The ledger was gone back in the safe deposit box, but the desk remained. I ran my hand over the wood again. I finally felt connected to him. He hadn't abandoned me. He had left me the tools. He just needed me to be brave enough to find them. I picked up my pencil and started sketching a new design. The lines were clean, strong. I was building a new life, a life where I wasn't the fixer or the scapegoat or the shadow. I was the architect. And I had built a wall of protection around my children, not with silence, but with truth. The cycle was broken, and I was the one holding the hammer. If you've ever had to be the cycle breaker in your family, share this story and follow for more stories about finding your